Hello, and a very warm welcome. So today we're going to dive into a really foundational text. It's a section of the Quran that gives us this remarkable blueprint for how to act ethically right in the middle of a conflict.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a question that has puzzled generals and philosophers for, well, forever. When everything descends into total chaos, where do you even begin to find the discipline, the moral compass to guide what you do? It seems almost impossible, right?
Well, the chapter we're looking at today, Surah Al-Anfāl, doesn't just talk about this in theory. It gives us a guide that was literally revealed right after a huge, pivotal battle. So you can think of it as a manual for keeping your discipline, for seeking justice, and holding on to your faith under the most intense pressure you can imagine.
All right, so our first stop is something very practical, the spoils of war. But as you're about to see, the rules here aren't really about getting rich. They're actually about purifying your intentions before the fighting is even done.
So this principle is called khums, and it literally just means 1/5. Verse 41 is incredibly clear. Before anyone takes anything for themselves, 1/5 of all the spoils has to be set aside. Now the question is, for who? And this is where it gets really interesting.
Just look at how this divine share is actually distributed. This isn't some tax that goes into a general fund. No, it's a dedicated fund for the messenger, his family, and, this is the crucial part, for the community's most vulnerable people. Orphans, the needy, and travelers who are stranded. It's basically a social safety net, and it's funded directly from the conflict itself.
You see, by taking that first chunk of any spoils and dedicating it to God and the community, the whole reason for the conflict gets reframed. This rule sends a powerful message. It's saying, you are fighting for something bigger than yourself, not to get rich. Your first thought must always be for God and for those who need help.
Now let's shift gears a bit. The text moves from the law to the actual event that sparked these revelations in the first place, the Battle of Badr. And the story makes it clear that what happened on that battlefield was less about human plans and way more about divine will and, you could say, psychological strategy.
This is just absolutely fascinating. The verses tell us that God made each army look smaller in the eyes of the other. So for the small group of believers, seeing the enemy as few gave them the courage to actually stand and fight. And for the much larger, more arrogant Quraysh army, it made them overconfident, causing them to walk right into the fight without proper preparation. Perception itself was being managed.
So why did this happen? Well, the Quran calls the day of the battle Yom Furqan, which means the day of criterion, or the day of distinction. The whole encounter was willed by God to be this really decisive moment. It was a clear test of faith that would separate truth from falsehood in a way nobody could deny.
Okay, so if victory is really about faith, then what are the internal rules of engagement? The next set of verses gives us a code of conduct that isn't focused on battlefield tactics, but on a fighter's spiritual and psychological state. It's all about what's going on inside.
The heart of this code is all about internal strength. You've got these commands: stand firm, remember God constantly, obey the leadership, don't argue with each other, and be patient. See, these aren't just individual orders. When you put them all together, they become a strategy to keep fear out and keep unity strong, even under intense pressure.
And then, right away, the text draws this sharp contrast with the enemy's motivation. On one side, you have the believers who are told to act from a place of unity, remembrance, and obedience. And on the other side, the Quraysh, who are described as marching out arrogantly just to show off and to stop people from finding God's path. Two armies, two totally different mindsets. And this is where we get this incredibly dramatic moment in the story. Satan, who had been whispering all these promises of victory and support to the Quraysh, sees the reality of the situation. He sees the divine help sent to the believers, and he just backs away. He completely abandons his allies, saying, I see what you don't see. I fear Allah. It's a stark reminder that all that arrogance, all those false promises, they just crumble when they come face to face with divine reality.
So now the camera kind of pulls back. The Quran connects what happened at Badr to a much bigger, universal pattern of divine justice that is played out all through history. In other words, this wasn't just a one-time thing. It's a consistent law. And here is that pattern of cause and effect, and it's compared to what happened with Pharaoh's people. It's a three-step process. First, God gives a people a blessing, maybe security or prosperity. Then that people changes what's inside themselves for the worse, through arrogance or rebellion. And third, God then changes their situation, and that blessing is taken away.
A community's fate, it seems, is tied directly to its collective character. All right, let's move into our final section, which has what is maybe one of the most powerful ethical principles in this whole passage. It's all about the absolute, non-negotiable importance of keeping your word.
And the language used here is incredibly strong. The text says that, in God's sight, the worst of all creatures are the ones who make treaties and then just break their promise every single time without any fear of God. And notice something important. The harshest condemnation isn't for fighting, it's for treachery.
So, what does this mean for the believers? Well, it leads to this remarkable moral standard. If you think an ally is about to betray you, you can't just launch a secret, preemptive attack. No, you have to openly and publicly cancel the treaty, making sure that both sides are on equal terms and know where they stand. Deceit is completely forbidden even with an enemy you expect to be deceived by.
So, as we wrap up, what's the common thread that runs through all of this? It's really a shift in focus, from the external to the internal. True wealth is redefined as devotion to God, not loot. Victory is found in faith in unity, not just having more soldiers. Justice is a reflection of a community's inner character, and the highest law of all is integrity, keeping your promise, even to your enemy.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to reflect on. You know, in our world today, we hear the phrase, all is fair in love and war, used to justify pretty much anything. So what does it truly mean to stick to a code that demands absolute integrity, that demands transparency, even with the people you consider your greatest adversaries? It's a profound question that this 1,400-year-old text is still challenging us with today.